The Korean mafia boss arrived as his ex tried to force his pregnant wife to lose the baby. What he whispered ended her. The metal pipe hung in the air like a question no one wanted answered. Hana's knuckles were white around the rust-stained steel. Her chest heaved. Sweat dripped from her hairline. Below her, crumpled on the concrete floor of the abandoned warehouse, Minji sobbed, her torn nurse's scrubs dark with dust and blood from a split lip. Her arms wrapped protectively around her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant. The baby girl inside her kicked frantically, as if she knew. "Please," Minji gasped. "Please, I didn't do anything to you." "You exist," Hana screamed, raising the pipe higher. "You get to have the life that should have been mine." The pipe began its downward arc, aimed directly at Minji's stomach. Then a shadow fell across them both. Hana froze mid-swing, the pipe trembling inches from Minji's belly. Her head snapped toward the warehouse entrance. He stood there, backlit by the dying afternoon sun streaming through the broken doorway. Tall, perfectly still, his expensive suit somehow immaculate, despite the filth of this place. His hands hung loose at his sides. No weapon, no phone, no urgency. Just that face. That calm, expressionless face. "Put down the pipe, Hana," Jin said. His voice was soft, almost gentle, the kind of gentleness that made your spine turn to ice. Hana's mouth fell open. The pipe wavered. No, you're supposed to be dead." Jin took one step forward. "Just one. Is that what you thought? After you stabbed me 7 times and left me in that bathtub? After you called the police thinking they'd find my body?" He tilted his head slightly. "Did you really think it would be that easy? How did you?" Hana's face cycled through shock, confusion, then ignited into pure rage. "You should be dead. I killed you. I destroyed everything you built. You were nothing when I left you bleeding out like. I've been waiting for you." Jin interrupted, and smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a slight curve at the corners of his mouth. But it was the kind of smile that made grown men delete their own bank accounts before he even asked. The kind that meant someone's entire world was about to end, and they didn't even know it yet. Hana stared at him. For the first time since she'd lured Minji to this warehouse, fear flickered across her face. Jin took another step, then another. His footsteps echoed off the concrete walls, measured, deliberate, unhurried. "You knew," Hana whispered, backing away from Minji, the pipe lowering slightly. "You knew I'd come for you. You wanted me to find you." "Of course I did." Jin's voice remained perfectly calm. "Did you really think your early release was luck, good behavior?" He laughed, a quiet, terrifying sound. "Hana, I've been planning this moment since the day they locked you away. Every step you've taken for the past 2 weeks, every breath you've taken since you walked out of that prison. I've been watching, waiting, for you to show everyone exactly what you really are." Hana's hands shook. The pipe slipped from her grip and clattered to the floor. "What did you do?" she breathed. Jin stopped 3 feet away from her, close enough to see the fear in her eyes, close enough for her to see the absolute certainty in his. He leaned in, whispered something in her ear. 30 seconds. That's all it took. Hana's face transformed, from rage to confusion, to dawning horror, to absolute devastation. Her skin went gray, her legs buckled. When Jin pulled back, she was already shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. "No," she whispered. No, you didn't. You couldn't have." Her phone started buzzing in her pocket. Once, twice, then continuously, a barrage of notifications that didn't stop. Jin turned away from her, walked to Minji, and gently helped his wife to her feet. He checked her face, her arms, touched her belly. "Are you hurt? Is the baby?" "We're okay," Minji gasped, clutching his jacket. "Jin, what's happening? What did you say to her?" Behind them, Hana pulled out her phone with trembling hands. The screen lit up her face, notification after notification, each one another nail in the coffin of the life she'd built on lies. She looked up at Jin with pure anguish. "You destroyed me." "No," Jin said quietly, wrapping his arm around Minji. "I just made sure everyone finally knows who you've always been." Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Hana collapsed to her knees, phone clutched to her chest, and screamed. This is the story of what Jin whispered in those 30 seconds. What he'd planned for 5 years. And how a mafia boss destroyed his enemy without laying a single finger on her. But to understand what he said, and why it was more devastating than any beating, any bullet, any violence, you need to understand who these people really were. What Hana had done that Jin had kept hidden all these years. And how a man who once made people disappear learned that the cruelest revenge isn't death, it's making someone live with the truth of what they are. Before we dive into this twisted story, drop a comment below. Do you think Jin was right to use his wife as bait? Or did he go too far? Let us know what you think, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is about to get dark. You won't want to miss what happens next. Now let me take you back 5 years. To the night, Jin became the shadow, and to the woman who tried to end him, but instead gave him a reason to become someone new. 5 years before that warehouse, Jin wasn't known by that name. In Seoul's underworld, they called him the Shadow, not because he lurked in darkness, but because he saw everything while remaining invisible himself. He wasn't a traditional mafia boss. He didn't run drugs or weapons. He didn't control territories or command armies of men. Jin dealt in something far more valuable and far more dangerous: information. He knew which prosecutor had a gambling addiction, which CEO was embezzling from his own company, which politician was sleeping with his intern, which gang leader had betrayed his brothers for a better deal. He knew about the hidden bank accounts, the forged documents, the bodies that were never found, the crimes that were never reported. He had files on everyone who mattered in Korea: politicians, corporate executives, celebrities, criminals. If you had power, Jin had leverage over you. If you had secrets, Jin owned you. And he made fortunes from it. Not through crude extortion, that was beneath him. No, Jin was subtler. A company needed a competitor to fall? Jin had the CEO's tax fraud records ready to leak. A politician needed a rival to drop out of the race? Jin had photos of the affair, the illegitimate child, the bribe that never made it into campaign finance reports. Everything had a price. Everything could be used. Everything could destroy. People called him a computer in human skin. Cold. Calculating. Emotionless. He didn't get angry. He didn't get scared. He simply collected data, analyzed vulnerabilities, and executed with surgical precision. His methods were legendary. He never killed anyone personally. Too messy, too obvious, too traceable. Why use violence when information was so much cleaner? A leaked file to the right journalist. An anonymous tip to the right prosecutor. Strategic photos delivered to the right spouse. Jin destroyed careers, marriages, reputations with nothing more than the truth. Weaponized and delivered at exactly the right moment to cause maximum damage. Some of his targets committed suicide, jumped from buildings or swallowed pills rather than face what Jin had exposed. He never felt guilty about it. They'd made their choices. He'd simply revealed the consequences. Violence is for amateurs, he'd say to the few associates he trusted. Information is forever. A man can recover from a beating. He can't recover from everyone knowing what he really is. What made Jin truly terrifying wasn't just what he knew. It was that he was impossible to eliminate. He had backup files hidden in servers across the world, safety deposit boxes in 5 countries, trusted contacts with instructions to release everything if he died or disappeared. Kill Jin, and every secret he'd ever collected would go public. Senators, CEOs, mob bosses, judges, everyone would burn together. So they left him alone. They paid his prices. They feared him. For 15 years, Jin operated without weakness. No family, no friends, no lovers, nothing that could be used against him. He lived in a penthouse apartment with bulletproof windows and 3 escape routes. He slept 4 hours a night and trusted no one. He was untouchable, invincible, alone, until Hana walked into his office with tears in her eyes and a story about an abusive ex-husband, and Jin made the first mistake of his entire career. He cared. Hana came to him on a Tuesday afternoon. Rain hammered against Jin's office windows as she sat across from his desk, mascara running down her cheeks, hands trembling around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. "My ex-husband," she whispered. "He's destroying me. He has connections. Police, lawyers, judges. I have evidence he's been embezzling from his company, but no one will listen to me. They all protect him." She looked up at Jin with those dark, desperate eyes. "I heard you help people when the system fails them." Jin should have said no, should have seen through it. But there was something about her. The way she held herself together even while falling apart, the intelligence behind the tears, the steel underneath the vulnerability. She wasn't just another desperate client. She was interesting. He helped her, found the evidence she needed, exposed her ex-husband's financial crimes, watched the man's empire crumble in 72 hours. Hana was grateful. More than grateful. She kept coming back, bringing coffee, asking questions about his work, listening when he talked about the game of information and power. She was brilliant, he discovered. She understood strategy, saw patterns, appreciated the elegance of destroying someone without violence. "You're an artist," she told him once, touching his hand across the table. "Everyone else plays with guns and knives. You play with truth." For the first time in 15 years, Jin let someone in. They became lovers. He brought her to his penthouse, showed her his private workspace, taught her about encryption, about how he stored and categorized information. He didn't give her access to everything. He wasn't stupid, but he trusted her with pieces, with enough to make him vulnerable. It was the first relationship he'd had since he was 23 years old. The first time he'd felt something other than cold calculation. He convinced himself it was just physical, just convenient. But late at night, when she slept beside him, Jin would lie awake and wonder if maybe he could have something like a normal life. If maybe the shadow could become just a man. 6 months in, Jin's security system flagged an unauthorized access attempt to his backup servers. It took him 4 hours to trace it. 4 hours of disbelief, then rage, then something colder and more dangerous than rage. Hana had been copying his files, systematically, for weeks. Everything he had on the most powerful people in Seoul, politicians, prosecutors, corporate chairmen. She'd cracked 3 of his 7 encryption layers. Using passwords she'd watched him enter. She'd downloaded terabytes of data onto encrypted drives he found hidden in her purse. When he confronted her that night, she didn't even try to deny it. "I have buyers," she said simply, backing toward his kitchen. "People willing to pay 50 million for your files. Did you really think I loved you, Jin? You're a monster who ruins lives for money. I'm just better at the game than you thought. You won't make it out of this building," Jin said quietly. "I already have," Hana smiled. "I called the police 20 minutes ago. Gave them your real name, your location, evidence of your crimes, tax evasion, blackmail, extortion. By tomorrow, you'll be in prison or dead." Jin moved toward her. Not fast. Just steady. Inevitable. That's when Hana pulled the knife from the block behind her. She was faster than he expected. The first stab caught him in the shoulder. The second, in his side. Jin tried to disarm her, but she was desperate, wild, slashing, and stabbing anywhere she could reach. Once in the chest. Once in the stomach. Twice more, in the side. He fell, hit the marble floor hard. Blood spread beneath him, warm and slick. Hana stood over him, breathing hard, the knife red in her hand. "You should have stayed untouchable," she said. Then she walked out, taking the encrypted drives with her. Jin lay there, feeling his life drain away and thought, "I deserve this. This is what happens when the shadow tries to be human." He woke up in a hospital bed 3 days later. Building security had found him. Called an ambulance. The trauma surgeon said he'd been minutes from bleeding out. 7 stab wounds. One had nicked his lung, another had come centimeters from his liver. The nurse who changed his bandages that first morning was young, competent, and kind, in a way that seemed foreign to Jin. Her name was Minji. She asked no questions about the stab wounds. Didn't judge, just did her job with quiet compassion. "You're lucky," she said, checking his vitals. "Most people don't survive this many wounds." "Lucky," Jin repeated. The word felt strange in his mouth. Meanwhile, police had arrested Hana, trying to board a flight to Singapore. The encrypted drives in her luggage. Attempted murder. Theft. Conspiracy. She was sentenced to 10 years. Jin should have felt victorious, should have felt satisfied watching her led away in handcuffs. But instead, he felt empty. Used. Stupid. While recovering, Jin did what he always did when someone hurt him. He investigated. Dug into Hana's past. Her real past. Beneath the stories she'd told him. What he found made his blood run cold. 3 years before she'd met Jin, Hana's parents and younger brother had died in what police ruled a home invasion. The case went cold after 6 months. No suspects, no arrests. Hana, the sole survivor who'd been sleeping at a friend's house that night, collected $3 million in life insurance. But Jin found things the police had missed. Security camera footage from a neighbor's house that Hana thought had been erased. Footage showing Hana entering her family home at 2 a.m. the night of the murders. Leaving 40 minutes later with a bag. Coming back at 6 a.m. to discover the bodies. He found the forged alibi, the friend who'd been paid to lie. He found witness testimony from her brother's best friend, who'd seen Hana's car near the house that night but had been too scared to come forward. He found the real autopsy reports that showed the murders were personal, brutal, ritualistic. Not a robbery. A slaughter. Hana had murdered her own family for the insurance money. Had spent 3 years playing the tragic survivor. Had used that blood money to build her life, her connections, her access to Jin's world. Jin compiled everything into encrypted files. Organized it, documented it, made it airtight. Then he buried it. Deep, where no one would find it. Not yet, not while Hana was already in prison for trying to kill him. No, Jin would wait. He'd learned his lesson about acting on emotion, about seeking immediate revenge. This information was too valuable to waste on quick satisfaction. He'd save it. Keep it close. Wait for exactly the right moment. when it would cause maximum destruction. Because the shadow had learned something lying in that hospital bed, watching the kind nurse change his bandages, feeling the phantom pain of 7 stab wounds. Violence ends quickly. But the right information, released at the perfect time, destroys forever. Hana would get out of prison eventually. And when she did, Jin would be ready. He just had to be patient. Minji came into Jin's hospital room every morning at 6 a.m. for 2 weeks. She'd check his vitals, change his bandages, adjust his medication. Her hands were steady and gentle. She never flinched at the wounds, 7 ragged scars that told a story of violence and betrayal. "You don't have to tell me what happened," she said on the 3rd day, carefully cleaning the wound near his ribs. "But whoever did this to you, I hope they're far away from you now." "She is," Jin said. It was the most he'd revealed to anyone. Minji nodded, didn't press, just kept working with that same quiet competence that Jin found strangely comforting. She was different from anyone he'd ever known. She talked about ordinary things, her elderly patients who told stories about the war, the coffee shop near her apartment that made the best vanilla lattes, the drama series she was watching with her roommate. Normal life, simple pleasures, things Jin had never experienced, never even considered experiencing. "Don't you have family?" she asked once, adjusting his IV. "No." "Friends?" "No." She looked at him then. Really looked at him, and Jin saw something in her eyes that wasn't pity. It was sadness. For him. As if she could see how alone he was, how empty. "Well," she said softly, "you have me now. At least until you're discharged." But she kept visiting, even after his wounds healed enough to leave. She'd bring books, novels, nothing Jin would normally read, stories about families and love and redemption. She'd sit in the chair beside his bed and tell him about her day, about the mother in the pediatric ward who sang to her sick daughter, about the old man who proposed to his wife of 50 years all over again because the dementia made him forget they were already married. "Why do you do this?" Jin asked one evening. "Why be a nurse? You see people at their worst. Pain, death, suffering." Minji smiled. "I also see them at their best. Fighting to survive, holding their loved ones, choosing to keep going even when it hurts." She paused. "Everyone deserves someone to care for them when they're broken, even if they think they don't." Jin realized she wasn't just talking about her patients. For the first time in 15 years, someone saw him as human, not as the shadow, not as a weapon, or a threat, or an asset to be used, just as a man who'd been hurt and needed healing. It terrified him. After he was discharged, Jin went back to his penthouse, sat in his office, surrounded by servers and encrypted files and all the information that gave him power over thousands of lives. And he felt nothing, just emptiness. A vast, hollow space where something human should have been. Hana's betrayal had shown him the truth. He'd become exactly what people feared. A monster. Cold, calculating, inhuman. He'd traded his soul for power, and the price was that he'd never be able to trust anyone, never be able to connect with anyone, never be able to be anything other than the shadow. He was 28 years old, richer than most people could imagine, more powerful than senators and mob bosses. And he was completely, utterly alone. He thought about Minji, her gentle hands, her easy smile, the way she talked about hope and healing like they were real things, achievable things. She represented everything he'd never had: goodness, warmth, normalcy. A life that meant something beyond leverage and blackmail. Jin made a decision. He spent 3 months planning his exit. It had to be perfect. The shadow couldn't just retire. People would come after him, try to eliminate him before he could use his files, try to steal his information, try to finish what Hana started. So Jin faked his death. He staged a car explosion on a remote highway, used dental records from a body he acquired through channels he'd built over 15 years, left enough evidence for police to confirm the death, leaked information to the underworld that the shadow was gone, burned alive after a deal went wrong. Before the death, Jin distributed copies of his most sensitive files to 3 trusted sources. Not friends, he had none, but professionals who understood dead man switches. If anything happened to Jin, if anyone came after his new identity, the files would go public. Everyone would burn together. It was insurance, the only kind that worked in his world. Then Jin became someone else entirely. Kangmin Seo, business consultant, specializing in strategic planning and risk assessment. Clean background, legitimate income, no criminal connections. He bought a modest apartment, started a small consulting firm, paid his taxes, lived like a normal person. 6 months after his death, Jin found Minji again. He showed up at the coffee shop near the hospital, the one she'd mentioned. He didn't expect her to remember him. It had been half a year, and he'd been just another patient in her care. but she recognized him immediately. "The stab wound patient," she said, surprised. "You look healthy." "I'm glad. I wanted to thank you," Jin said. "You were kind to me when I was going through something difficult." They talked. Just talked. About coffee, and the weather, and her work, and his new consulting business. It felt strange, and wonderful, and terrifying, all at once. "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" Jin asked before he could stop himself. Minji studied his face for a long moment. "Are you still in danger? From whoever hurt you?" "No," Jin said. And it was true. The shadow was dead. "I left that life behind." "Then yes," she smiled. "I'd like that." Jin courted her the way normal people did. Dinners at restaurants, walks in the park, movies and conversations, and learning about each other. He was honest. Partially. He told her he'd worked in security consulting before, that he'd been involved with dangerous people, that someone he trusted had betrayed him. He showed her his scars, and told her they were reminders that he'd survived something terrible, and chosen to become someone better. Minji didn't need all the details. She saw that he was trying to change, that he was building something real. "Everyone has a past," she said one night, her head on his shoulder. "What matters is who you choose to be now." They married a year later. Small ceremony. Just a few of Minji's friends and family. Jin had no one from his old life. The shadow had burned all those bridges. But he didn't care. For the first time, he had something that mattered more than power or information. When Minji told him she was pregnant, Jin cried, actually cried. He put his hand on her belly, still flat, too early to show, and made a promise. This child would never know his old world. This child would have the safety and innocence and love he'd never had. For 7 months, Jin kept that promise. He attended every prenatal appointment. He painted the nursery soft yellow. He read parenting books at 3 a.m. He built furniture, and bought tiny clothes, and imagined holding his daughter for the first time. He was happy. Genuinely, unexpectedly, impossibly happy. But there was one thing Minji didn't know. One secret Jin kept even as he transformed his life. He'd never stopped monitoring Hana's prison sentence. And he'd already decided exactly what he'd do when she got out. Jin watched the parole hearing through a live feed on his laptop. Hidden camera, untraceable signal. Technology had improved since his shadow days, and he'd kept up with every advancement. Hana sat at the table in her prison uniform, hands folded, face composed. 5 years had changed her. No more designer clothes or perfect makeup. Her hair was shorter, grayer at the temples. But her eyes, those calculating eyes, were exactly the same. "Ms. Park has been a model prisoner," the parole board chairman read from his notes. "Exemplary behavior. Completed anger management courses. Participates in group therapy. The prison psychologist's evaluation is extremely favorable." Jin had paid the psychologist $30,000 for that evaluation. Had bribed 2 of the 5 board members. Had ensured that every document, every recommendation, every piece of evidence pointed toward early release. Given her progress and rehabilitation, the chairman continued, "This board votes to grant parole, effective in 30 days. Hana's face remained neutral, but Jin saw the flash of triumph in her eyes. She thought she'd won, thought she'd fooled them all. Jin closed the laptop and looked out the window of his home office. Minji was in the nursery down the hall, folding tiny clothes and humming to herself. 7 months pregnant, glowing with happiness, completely unaware that her husband had just released a monster back into the world. Jin told himself it was necessary. In prison, Hana was a known threat, contained, controlled, manageable. But she'd get out eventually anyway. Better to control when and how. Better to be ready. Free, she'd reveal her true nature again. She'd come after him, just like Jin knew she would. And this time, he'd have everything documented. Every threat, every action, every crime. He'd destroy her so completely that she'd never be a threat to anyone again. At least, that's what Jin told himself, as he manufactured his wife's future nightmare. Minji knew nothing. He kept it that way. She thought his past was buried, dead, harmless. She trusted him. And Jin violated that trust every day by orchestrating Hana's release, by planning a confrontation that would put Minji directly in danger. But the shadow had always understood something that normal people didn't. Sometimes, you had to let the monster out of its cage to prove it was still a monster. Then you could destroy it permanently. Jin just had to make sure he was in complete control when it happened. Hana walked out of prison on a cold October morning. 5 years, compressed into one moment of stepping through gates that had held her captive since Jin had put her there. She had $1,700 saved from prison work programs, a halfway house placement, a parole officer who'd check on her twice a week, and burning, consuming rage that had only grown stronger behind bars. Jin had survived, had testified against her, had watched her get dragged away in handcuffs while he lay in that hospital bed, wounded but alive. He'd taken everything from her, her freedom, her reputation, her future. And every night for 5 years, Hana had fantasized about making him pay. She got a job at a convenience store, checked in with her parole officer, attended mandatory counseling sessions, played the role of reformed criminal perfectly. At night, she searched for any trace of Kim Jinho, the shadow. Found nothing. It was as if he'd vanished completely after she went to prison. No financial records, no property, no digital footprint. Either he'd gone deeper underground, or 3 weeks after her release, Hana saw the article. It was in a business magazine, profiling rising consultants under 35. There was a photo of a man, in an expensive suit, standing in front of a modern office. Kang Min-seo, the caption read, Strategic Planning and Risk Assessment Specialist. Hana stared at the photo. Different name, different clothes, slightly different hairstyle. But she'd know that face anywhere. She'd kissed it, betrayed it, tried to kill it. Jin was alive, had faked his death, had rebuilt his entire life while she rotted in prison. The rage that flooded through her was so intense she thought she might actually catch fire. Hana found his office the next day, followed him from a distance, watched him get into an expensive car, drive to a nice neighborhood, enter a modern apartment building. This was his life now. Clean, legitimate, free. She followed him for a week, learned his patterns, his schedule, his routines. On day 8, she saw the woman, pregnant. Very pregnant. She came out of the apartment building with Jin, his hand protective on her lower back. They walked to a cafe together, laughing at something Jin said. He looked at the pregnant woman with such tenderness that Hana wanted to vomit. She followed them inside, sat 3 tables away, listened. Min-seo, you're going to spoil her, the woman said, smiling as Jin ordered decaf coffee and a pastry. She's not even born yet. I'm practicing, Jin replied. By the time Yuna arrives, I'll have spoiling down to an art form. Yuna, they'd already named the baby. We're already planning a future. While Hana had lost 5 years of her life, Jin had built this, a wife, a child, a completely new identity. He'd faked his death, left her in prison, moved on, found happiness. The betrayal was so profound that Hana couldn't breathe. She stumbled out of the cafe before they could notice her. That night, Hana made a decision. Jin had taken everything from her. Now she'd take everything from him. She spent 2 more weeks watching. The wife, Minji, she learned from listening to their conversations, was a nurse at Seoul General. She worked 3 12-hour shifts a week. She was kind, friendly, completely ordinary. The exact opposite of Hana. That's what Jin wanted now. Normalcy, simplicity. A good woman, with no darkness in her. Fine. Hana would show him what happened when you tried to erase your past. She'd show him that the shadow couldn't just become a family man. That monsters don't get happy endings. Her plan formed slowly, carefully. She couldn't just kill Jin. That was too easy, too quick. He needed to suffer. Needed to lose everything the way she had. Needed to understand that you don't betray Hana and walk away unscathed. First, she'd kill the baby. Make him watch his pregnant wife lose the child he clearly already loved. Then she'd kill Minji slowly, painfully, while Jin was helpless to stop it. And finally, when he'd lost everything that mattered, when he was broken and destroyed, then she'd kill him. It was perfect, poetic. The shadow had thought he could escape into the light. Hana would drag him back into darkness and make sure he died there. She just needed the right opportunity. The right moment when Minji was vulnerable and alone. Hana smiled to herself as she planned. Jin thought he was so smart, thought he'd hidden himself so well, but he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated her. He always had. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon, while Minji was folding laundry in the nursery. She didn't recognize the number, but it had Seoul General's area code. Mrs. Kang? A woman's voice, professional, and slightly urgent. This is Dr. Lee, from the prenatal department at Seoul General. I'm calling about your blood work from last week's appointment. Minji's heart seized. Is something wrong? There's an abnormality we need to discuss immediately. The levels of a certain protein are concerning. It could indicate complications with the pregnancy. I need you to come in right away, so we can run additional tests. What kind of complications? Minji's hand went to her belly. The baby kicked, as if sensing her mother's fear. I'd prefer to explain in person. These situations require careful monitoring. Can you come to our satellite clinic this afternoon? We're closing soon, but I can stay late for you. The satellite clinic? I usually go to the main hospital. Our equipment there is more specialized for this particular issue. I'm texting you the address now. It's important you come alone. We can't have other patients in the facility during after-hours appointments. Privacy regulations. The explanation sounded reasonable, medical, official, but something felt off. Can I bring my husband? Mrs. Kang, every minute counts here. Your husband can meet you after we've run the tests. Please, I have a very narrow window before I have to leave for the day. Minji looked at her phone. Jin was in a client meeting across town. Important contract negotiation. He'd told her he couldn't be disturbed for at least 2 hours. The baby kicked again. Harder this time. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Minji said. She grabbed her purse and jacket, texted Jin that she had a quick prenatal checkup and would explain later. Didn't want to worry him until she knew what was happening. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe the test was wrong. Maybe everything was fine. The taxi driver looked confused when Minji gave him the address. That's the industrial district. You sure? It's a satellite clinic, Minji said, though doubt crept up her spine. Just take me there, please. The ride took 15 minutes. With each passing block, the buildings became more rundown. Fewer people on the streets, more broken windows and graffiti. This wasn't where medical facilities were located. Lady, I don't think there's any clinic here, the driver said, pulling up to a chain-link fence surrounding an abandoned warehouse. Minji stared at the building. Rusted metal siding, broken windows, weeds growing through cracks in the pavement. No signs, no cars, no lights. This has to be wrong, she whispered. Then she saw movement. A figure standing in the doorway of the warehouse. A woman, watching her. Want me to wait? The driver asked. Minji should have said yes. Should have told him to drive away immediately. But she was already opening the door, already stepping out, already walking toward the warehouse because maybe there was an explanation. Maybe the GPS was wrong. Maybe. Hello, Minji, the woman said. She was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way, mid-30s, with cold eyes and a smile that made Minji's skin crawl. I think there's been a mistake, Minji said, backing up. I'm looking for prenatal clinic? The woman laughed. There's no clinic. There's no Dr. Lee. There's just you, me, and a conversation that's 5 years overdue. Minji turned to run back to the taxi, but it was already pulling away. The driver hadn't waited. Don't bother screaming, the woman said, pulling something from behind her back. A metal pipe, rust-stained and heavy. We're the only ones here for miles. No one's coming to help you. What do you want? Minji's voice shook. Her hand went protectively to her belly. I want you to understand who you married. The woman stepped closer, blocking the exit. Do you know what your husband did before he became Kangmin Seo? Do you know who he really is? I don't know what you're talking about. Kim Jinho. They called him the Shadow. He destroyed lives for money, blackmailed politicians, ruined families, made people kill themselves rather than face what he'd expose. The woman's voice rose with each word. He was a monster, and you married him thinking he was some respectable consultant. Minji shook her head, but doubt flickered. Jin had always been vague about his past, had told her he'd worked in security, with dangerous people, had scars he never fully explained. I don't know who you are, Minji said, but my husband. Your husband left me to rot in prison. The woman's face twisted with rage. I'm Hana, the woman he tried to erase from his perfect new life. He faked his death, started over, found you, innocent, sweet, stupid you, and pretended to be someone different. You're lying. Am I? Hana moved closer. Ask him about the 7 stab wounds. Ask him who gave them to him. Ask him why someone who supposedly worked in quote security consulting had to fake his death and change his identity. Minji's mind raced. The scars, the nightmares Jin sometimes had. The way he'd been so careful about building their life, so paranoid about privacy and security. The money he had, that seemed too much for a consultant who'd only been in business a few years. I see it in your face, Hana said softly. You're starting to understand. Your whole marriage is built on lies. Your husband is a criminal who destroyed hundreds of lives. And now, she raised the pipe, I'm going to destroy his. Please. Minji backed toward the warehouse interior. Whatever he did to you, I'm not. You're everything to him. That's enough. Hana followed her inside. He took 5 years from me. I'm going to take everything from him. Starting with that baby you're carrying. Minji ran, 7 months pregnant, but adrenaline made her fast. She stumbled deeper into the warehouse, looking for another exit, a weapon, anything. There's nowhere to go. Hana's voice echoed off the concrete walls. Her footsteps were steady, unhurried. I locked all the exits. It's just you and me. Minji found a corner behind some old machinery. She crouched down, trying to quiet her breathing, one hand on her belly. The baby kicked frantically, sensing the danger. I'm not going to kill you quickly, Hana called out. That would be merciful. No, first I'm going to make you lose that baby. I'm going to beat you until your body rejects it. Until you feel the same kind of loss I felt losing 5 years of my life. Footsteps growing closer. Then, when Jin arrives, and he will arrive, he's probably tracking your phone right now. I'll let him watch you die slowly. Let him see what happens when the shadow tries to play house. Minji saw Hana's shadow on the wall, coming closer. The pipe dragging on the concrete with a horrible scraping sound. Come out, Minji. Make this easier on yourself. Minji squeezed her eyes shut. She thought of Jin, of the life they'd built, of the daughter they'd named Yuna, of all the promises they'd made about the future. She thought, please let him find me. Please let us survive this. Then Hana found her. There you are. Minji looked up at the woman standing over her, pipe raised, face twisted with 5 years of accumulated hatred. Please, Minji whispered. Please don't hurt my baby. Your baby. Hana laughed. The baby that's going to grow up thinking her father is a good man. That baby needs to die before it can be poisoned by his lies. The pipe swung down. Minji rolled aside. The metal struck concrete where her head had been, sending up sparks. She scrambled to her feet, ran again, but Hana was faster. Grabbed Minji's jacket, yanked her backward. Minji fell hard. Her shoulder hit the ground. Her elbow. She curled immediately into a protective ball, arms wrapped around her belly, and screamed. Hana stood over her, breathing hard, eyes wild. I wanted him to be here for this, Hana said. But I can't wait anymore. 5 years I waited. I'm done waiting. She raised the pipe high above her head, aimed it directly at Minji's pregnant stomach. Tell Jin I'm sorry I didn't make this last longer. The pipe began its downward arc. And then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing through the warehouse. Hana froze mid-swing. The pipe trembled inches from Minji's belly. They both turned toward the sound. In the doorway, backlit by the dying afternoon sun, stood Jin. His face was completely calm, and he was smiling. Put down the pipe, Hana. Jin's voice cut through the warehouse like a blade. Quiet, controlled, absolutely certain. He stood framed in the doorway, his suit jacket unbuttoned, hands loose at his sides. No weapon, no backup, just that terrible, knowing calm. Hana froze. The pipe trembled in her hands, still inches from Minji's pregnant belly. Her head snapped toward Jin, eyes wide with shock that quickly morphed into fury. No, she whispered. No, how did you find you? Jin took one step into the warehouse. Just one. I've known where you were every single moment since you left prison, Hana. Every step you took, every person you followed, every plan you made. That's impossible. Is it? Another step. You thought you were so careful, watching me from a distance, following my routines, planning your revenge. His smile widened slightly. You never once considered that I was watching you back. Hana's face went pale. You couldn't have known I'd come for me the day you were released. Jin's laugh was soft, almost sad. Hana, I've been counting down the days until your parole for 5 years. I knew you'd find me. I knew you'd see Minji. I knew you'd want to destroy everything I'd built. He paused. I've been tracking your every move for 2 weeks. The GPS tracker I planted in your phone the day you left prison made it easy. You're lying. Check your phone. Back panel. Behind the battery. Hana's hands shook as she pulled out her phone with one hand, keeping the pipe raised with the other. She pried off the back cover. There, nestled beside the battery, was a small tracking chip. Her face transformed. Shock. Horror. Rage. You did this, she breathed. You wanted me to find you. You wanted me to come after. Her eyes darted to Minji, still curled on the ground. You used your own wife as bait? I let you follow me, Jin confirmed. I let you learn Minji's schedule. I let you plan this entire encounter. Another step closer. Because I needed you to reveal exactly what you are one more time. I needed proof that you haven't changed. That 5 years in prison didn't make you better, just more careful. You wanted this to happen. Minji's voice was barely a whisper from the ground. She stared at Jin with a mixture of relief and dawning horror. You knew she'd try to kill me. To kill our baby? Jin's jaw tightened. You were never in real— Maybe, Jin said. But I learned something important over the past 5 years, Hana. Do you want to know what it was? I want you to die. Hana screamed and swung the pipe directly at Jin's head. He caught it mid-swing with one hand. The metal stopped inches from his skull, his fingers wrapped around it like a vice. Hana stared in disbelief as Jin held the pipe motionless, absorbing all her strength without even flinching. Still too slow, Jin said softly. Then he ripped the pipe from her grip with one violent twist and tossed it aside. It clattered across the concrete, echoing through the empty warehouse. Hana stumbled backward. Tried to run. Jin moved faster than she'd ever seen him move. Grabbed her wrist mid-stride, spun her around and pulled her close, one arm locked around her shoulders, holding her in place. Let me go. Not yet. Jin's mouth was next to her ear now. First, I have something to tell you. Something I've been saving for exactly this moment. Hana struggled, but his grip was iron. I don't care what you. I've always known you murdered your family. Hana went completely still. The security footage you thought you deleted. Jin whispered. I recovered it 5 years ago. Every frame of you entering your parents' house at 2 a.m. leaving 40 minutes later with a bag. Coming back at 6 a.m. to discover the bodies and play the traumatized survivor. No. Every forged document you created, every lie you told police, every fake tear you cried at their funeral. I have all of it, Hana. The real autopsy reports, showing the murders were personal, brutal, premeditated, not a random home invasion. The forged alibi from your friend who you paid to lie. The witness testimony from your brother's friend who saw your car that night but was too scared to come forward. Hana's breathing became ragged. You're lying. I have the insurance records showing you collected $3 million 2 weeks after their deaths. I have your bank records showing the cash withdrawals you used to pay off witnesses. I have everything, Hana. I've had it for 5 years. If you had evidence, you would have used it immediately? Sent you to prison for life when you tried to kill me? Jin's laugh was cold. No, that would have been too quick. Too merciful. You see, I learned patience from you. You taught me that revenge is best served when your enemy has the most to lose. Hana's body started trembling. What did you do? 5 minutes ago, while you were hunting my wife, I sent every piece of evidence to every major news outlet in Korea. Every police precinct. Every prosecutor's office. Every online news platform. Jin's voice was perfectly calm, explaining like he was discussing the weather. By tomorrow morning, the entire country will know the truth about poor, tragic Hana Park, the woman who survived her family's murder. No. They'll know you're the monster who killed them in their sleep for insurance money. They'll see the security footage of you entering the house. They'll read the witness testimonies. They'll know everything. You can't. People won't believe. Oh, they'll believe it. Because I didn't just send evidence, Hana. I sent your confession too. Hana's blood turned to ice. What confession? This warehouse. Jin gestured with his free hand. It has cameras. Hidden in the rafters, in the walls, in the machinery. They've been recording since you arrived. Every word you said to Minji. Every threat. Every admission that you're trying to kill her and our baby. Every detail you revealed while you thought you were safe. Hana's eyes darted around the warehouse, searching for the cameras, realizing the trap she'd walked into. You confessed to planning murder, Jin continued. You admitted you wanted to make Minji lose the baby. You revealed your hatred, your violence, your complete lack of remorse. And all of it, every second, is now in the hands of law enforcement. Why? Hana's voice cracked. Why go through all this? You could have just killed me. You've killed people for less. I've never killed anyone, Jin said. That's what you never understood about the shadow. I didn't need to kill. I just needed people to destroy themselves. He paused. But you're right. I could have made you disappear. Staged an accident. Made sure you never threatened my family. That's what the old me would have done. Then why didn't you? Because Minji taught me something. Jin glanced at his wife, still on the ground, watching them with wide, terrified eyes. She taught me that the most powerful thing isn't making someone disappear. It's making them face the truth of what they are. Jin pulled Hana closer, his final words barely audible. I've destroyed your past, your present, and any future you could have had. Every relationship, every opportunity, every chance at redemption, gone. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, but not as the woman who tried to kill the shadow. As the woman who murdered her own family. That's what you'll be known as. That's what will define you until you die. He released her suddenly. Hana stumbled, caught herself. Death would have been mercy, Hana, Jin said, stepping back. This is justice. Hana stood there, frozen, as the full weight of his words sank in. Then her phone started buzzing in her pocket. Once, twice, then continuously. A barrage of notifications that didn't stop. She pulled it out with shaking hands. The screen lit up her face, and Jin watched as her expression crumbled. News alert. Breaking. Family murder survivor revealed as killer. News alert. Park Hana arrested for triple homicide. New evidence surfaces. Missed call. Detective Park. Seoul Police. Text from G1. How could you? I defended you for years. Text from Sumin. You killed your own brother. Your brother. I never want to see you again. Text from unknown. Monster. You're a monster. The notifications kept coming. Dozens. Then hundreds. News outlets. Former friends. People she'd known. All of them seeing the evidence. All of them knowing the truth. Hana's face went gray. Her legs buckled. She looked up at Jin with absolute devastation. No, she whispered. No. This can't be. You didn't. You couldn't have. I did. Jin walked past her toward Minji. And unlike you, I don't make mistakes. Please. Hana's voice broke. Please, Jin, I'll do anything. I'll leave. I'll disappear. I'll never. You'll do exactly what you deserve. Jin knelt beside Minji, gently helping her to her feet. You'll face every consequence of what you've done. No more hiding. No more lies. Just the truth. He checked Minji carefully, touching her face where Hana had grabbed her, examining her arms for injuries, his hand gentle on her belly. Are you hurt? Is the baby? We're okay, Minji gasped, but her eyes were filled with tears. Jin, you knew. You let her. I know. And we'll talk about that. But right now, we need to leave. Behind them, Hana collapsed to her knees on the concrete. Her phone was still buzzing, still flooding with notifications, each one another nail in the coffin of the life she'd built on lies and blood money. This isn't justice, she screamed. You're a monster. You destroyed me just as completely as I would have destroyed you. You're no different than me. Jin paused at the warehouse entrance, looked back at her one final time. You're wrong, he said quietly. I gave you exactly what you deserved. You gave people death. I gave you truth, and you'll have to live with it every single day for the rest of your life. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Jin wrapped his arm around Minji and led her toward the exit. Didn't look back at Hana as she collapsed completely, phone pressed to her chest, screaming into the empty warehouse. As they stepped into the fading sunlight, Jin said softly, It's over now. You're safe. Both of you are safe. But Minji pulled away from him, staring at her husband with a mixture of relief and something else. Something that looked like fear. Am I? She whispered. Am I really safe with you? Jin had no answer for that. Behind them, police cars screeched to a halt. Officers poured into the warehouse. And Hana's screams turned into sobs as they read her rights and placed her in handcuffs for the second time in 5 years. This time, she'd never walk free again. And Jin had made certain of it, without ever laying a hand on her. The hospital room was too bright. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, sterile and unforgiving. Minji sat in the examination bed, hospital gown tied loosely around her pregnant belly, staring at the monitor showing their daughter's heartbeat, strong, steady, unaffected by the violence her mother had just survived. The doctor had been thorough, checked Minji's vitals, performed an ultrasound, monitored the baby for any signs of distress. Everything was normal. Physically they were both fine. You're very lucky, the doctor said, making notes on her chart. No injuries to the fetus. Your shoulder will be bruised, and you'll be sore for a few days, but there's no serious damage. Still, I'd like to keep you overnight for observation. Thank you, Minji whispered. The doctor left. The door clicked shut, and suddenly it was just Minji and Jin in the too bright room with the humming lights and the steady beep of the heart monitor. Jin sat in the chair beside her bed, still in his expensive suit, not a hair out of place. He held her hand gently, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, the same hand that had caught a metal pipe mid-swing, the same hand that had gripped Hana's wrist, like iron. The silence stretched between them. Heavy, suffocating. You let her attack me, Minji said finally. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Jin's thumb stopped moving. Minji, you knew she'd call. You knew she'd lure me somewhere. You knew she'd try to hurt me. Minji pulled her hand away from his. And you let it happen. I was 30 seconds away the entire time, Jin said. I was tracking your phone. I had men positioned around the warehouse. You were never in real danger. Never in real danger. Minji's voice cracked. She sat up straighter, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. Jin, she had a pipe raised over my stomach. Over our daughter. 30 seconds is. Do you understand what can happen in 30 seconds? I had to time it perfectly. You used me as bait. Tears streamed down Minji's face now. You used our baby as bait to catch your ex-girlfriend. What kind of person does that? Jin's jaw tightened. The kind of person who understands that Hana would never stop. The kind who knows that half measures don't work with people like her. So you orchestrated the entire thing? Her release? Her stalking us? The phone call? All of it? Yes. The admission hung in the air between them. No excuses. No softening. Just the truth. Minji shook her head slowly. Show me. What? Show me. The cameras. The evidence. Whatever justification you have for putting your pregnant wife in a warehouse with a psychopath. Jin pulled out his phone. Opened an app. The screen showed multiple camera angles of the warehouse. Hidden cameras in the rafters, in the walls, in the old machinery. He pressed play. Minji watched herself arrive at the warehouse. Watched Hana reveal herself. Block the exit. Watched the entire confrontation unfold from 4 different angles. Crystal clear footage. Perfect audio. She heard Hana's confession about killing her family. Heard the threats about making Minji lose the baby. Heard every word, every admission, every piece of evidence that would put Hana away forever. You recorded everything, Minji whispered. Everything. Jin's voice was steady. If I'd had her arrested on suspicion alone, she'd have gotten a good lawyer. Would have been out in months, maybe a year. She'd come back. Try again. Spend the rest of her life trying to destroy us. He paused, meeting Minji's eyes. This way. She'll die in prison. The evidence is overwhelming. Her confession is recorded. The attempted assault is documented. The revelation about her family's murders is public. She's done, Minji. She can never hurt us again. So this was all calculated. Minji stared at him. Every part of it. Yes, you're still him. Her voice broke. You're still the shadow. Jin flinched like she'd struck him. I protected you. You manipulated me. You manipulated everyone. You orchestrated a woman's release from prison. Let her stalk us for weeks. Put our daughter at risk. Also, you could destroy Hana in the most complete way possible. Minji's hands shook. Tell me, Jin, did you do this to protect us? Or did you do it because you couldn't resist playing the game one more time? The question landed like a punch. Jin opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Both, he said finally. It was both. At least he was honest. I protected you the only way I know how, Jin continued. By being smarter than her, by planning better, by controlling the situation completely. He leaned forward. Would you have preferred I killed her? Because that was the other option. I could have made her disappear the day she left prison. No violence, no confrontation, just gone. Would that have been better? Minji stared at her hands. At the IV line in her arm. At the monitor showing their daughter's heartbeat. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know what's better. I just know that I'm angry. I'm relieved she's gone. I'm grateful you saved me. But I'm also terrified of what you're capable of. She looked up at him. You planned this for 5 years, Jin. 5 years of watching her in prison. Orchestrating her release. Preparing cameras and tracking devices and evidence packages. 5 years of cold, calculated revenge while playing the role of devoted husband. It wasn't a role, wasn't it? Minji's voice was sharp. Because right now, I don't know which parts of you are real and which parts are performance. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. She paused, and her voice softened. But I also don't know if I can leave you either. Jin reached for her hand again. This time, she let him take it. I need time, Minji said. I need to think about this. About us. About whether I can stay married to someone who, she trailed off, who's still a monster. Jin finished quietly. I was going to say, who manipulates the people he loves to achieve his goals. Minji squeezed his hand. But maybe it's the same thing. They sat in silence as the monitor beeped. As their daughter's heart beat strong and steady, unaware of the moral complexity of her father's protection. The news broke the next morning. Minji watched it from her hospital bed, Jin beside her, as every major outlet in Korea ran the story simultaneously. Breaking news. Family murder survivor revealed as killer. The anchor's voice was grave, as security footage played on screen. Hana, entering her family's home, at 2 a.m. The timestamp. The bag she carried out. Her return at 6 a.m. to discover the bodies. Park Hana, who gained public sympathy as the sole survivor of her family's brutal murder 3 years ago, has been arrested on charges of triple homicide. New evidence reveals she killed her parents and younger brother for insurance money. The story dominated every channel. Social media exploded. People who defended Hana, donated to her fundraisers, shared her story as an example of resilience. They all turned on her instantly. She fooled us all. How could someone kill their own family? I donated money to her. I feel sick. The trial was fast-tracked. The evidence was overwhelming. Hana's public defender advised her to plead guilty in exchange for life with possibility of parole after 30 years. She refused. Insisted on a trial. Wanted to fight. It lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Guilty on all counts. 3 counts of first-degree murder. 1 count of insurance fraud. 1 count of attempted murder of Minji. 1 count of assault. Life sentence without possibility of parole. Jin watched the verdict from his hospital chair. Minji sleeping beside him. His face showed nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. No emotion at all. But Minji woke up and saw the news. Saw his expression. And knew. He'd gotten exactly what he wanted. Complete, total, permanent destruction of his enemy. Are you happy? She asked softly. I don't know, Jin said. And he sounded like he meant it. 2 months later, on a Tuesday morning in December, Minji went into labor. Jin was in a client meeting when his phone buzzed. He looked at the text, stood up immediately, and left without explanation. He made it to the hospital, with 20 minutes to spare. Found Minji in the delivery room, breathing through contractions, her face flushed and determined. You're here, she gasped. I'm here. Jin took her hand. I'm not going anywhere. Labor lasted 16 hours. Jin stayed the entire time. Let Minji squeeze his hand until his fingers went numb. Wiped her forehead, whispered encouragement. Breathed with her, through every contraction. When their daughter finally arrived, small, red-faced, screaming with the fury of someone who'd just been evicted from a warm, comfortable place, Jin cried. real tears, streaming down his face. Unashamed, the nurse placed the baby on Minji's chest. She was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a full head of dark hair. Yuna, Minji whispered, touching their daughter's tiny hand. Hello, Yuna? Jin leaned over both of them, his family, and felt something break open in his chest, something that had been locked away for so long he'd forgotten it existed. Love, pure, uncomplicated, terrifying love. I'm sorry, he whispered to Minji, for everything. For using you, for not trusting you enough to tell you the truth, for being… I know. Minji looked up at him. She'd made her decision during the 2 months since the warehouse. You're not that man anymore, Jin. But you're not completely new either. You're somewhere in between. She paused. I'm choosing to believe you can keep changing. That every day, you can move a little further away from who you were, and closer to who you want to be. Thank you, Jin breathed. But, Minji's voice hardened slightly, if you ever manipulate me like that again, if you ever use me or our daughter as part of some plan without my knowledge, I'm gone. Do you understand? I understand. I mean it, Jin. One more time, and I take Yuna, and you never see us again. I understand, he repeated. It won't happen again. I promise. Minji studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. I believe you. Yuna chose that moment to let out a wail. Both parents laughed, and the tension broke. Jin touched his daughter's tiny hand. She gripped his finger with surprising strength. I'm going to be better for you, he whispered. I'm going to be the father you deserve. Yuna just kept crying. She had no idea what kind of man her father had been, what he was capable of, what he'd done to protect her before she was even born. Maybe that was for the best. 2 years later, life had settled into something approaching normal. They'd moved to a new apartment, in a quieter neighborhood, better schools for when Yuna got older. Jin's consulting firm was thriving. Legitimate clients, legitimate work, no shadows or secrets. Yuna's second birthday party was loud and chaotic. 20 toddlers running around, parents chatting, decorations everywhere. Yuna sat in the middle of it all, chocolate cakes smeared on her face, laughing at everything. Jin watched from the kitchen doorway, coffee in hand, genuine smile on his face. This was his life now. Birthday parties and parent-teacher conferences, and worrying about whether Yuna was eating enough vegetables. It was boring. Ordinary, normal. It was everything he'd never known he wanted. Minji came up beside him, slipping her arm around his waist. Happy? Yes, Jin said, and he meant it. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. Jin saw the prison postmark, and knew immediately who it was from. He took it to his home office, closed the door, and opened it with careful hands. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible. Hana had never had nice handwriting. But this was worse. The writing of someone whose hands no longer worked properly. Jin, I don't expect you to read this. You probably threw it away the moment you saw my name. But I'm dying. Terminal diagnosis. 6 months left if I'm lucky, and I wanted to say something before I'm gone. You were right. Death would have been mercy. Every day for 2 years, I've lived as the monster everyone sees. Inmates attack me in the showers. Guards look the other way. I have no visitors, no mail except this one letter I had to bribe someone to send. My own extended family won't claim my body when I die. I spend 23 hours a day in solitary for my own protection. The 1 hour I'm out, people spit on me. Call me family killer. Monster. Demon. I thought prison would be the worst part, but it's not. The worst part is knowing that everyone knows what I am, that I can never pretend to be anything else, that for the rest of my life, however short it is now, I'll be defined by the worst thing I ever did. You did that to me, Jin. You made sure everyone knew. You stripped away every lie, every mask, every chance at redemption. You left me naked and exposed and hated. And you know what? It's worse than death, so much worse. I hope your daughter never learns what her father is capable of. Because the man who destroyed me so completely, who planned every detail of my humiliation, who used his own pregnant wife as bait, who orchestrated years of psychological torture, that man is the real monster. And monsters raise monsters, Jin. Remember that. When Yuna grows up and asks about your past, when she starts to see the coldness in your eyes, when she realizes that her father is capable of cruelty beyond what normal people can imagine, remember that you created this. You chose to be this. You think you've changed. You think you've become someone better. But you just found more sophisticated ways to destroy people. More acceptable ways to be terrible. I killed my family for money. It was brutal and evil and unforgivable. But you destroyed me because you could, because it was elegant, because it satisfied something dark inside you that you refused to acknowledge. We're not different, Jin. We're exactly the same. I hope you die knowing that. Hana. Jin read the letter 3 times. Then he walked to the fireplace in his office, lit a match, and held the paper to the flame. He watched it burn, watched Hana's shaky handwriting curl and blacken and turn to ash. Watched the words disappear, monsters raise monsters, until there was nothing left but smoke. But the words stayed with him, lodged in his mind like shrapnel. He looked at the photo on his desk. Yuna at 18 months, grinning at the camera, chocolate smeared on her face. Innocent, pure, unaware of what her father had been. Am I different? Jin thought. Or just more sophisticated? I didn't kill Hana, but did I do something worse? When Yuna asks about my past, and she will ask, eventually, what will I tell her? He had no answers, just questions that wouldn't stop circling. That night, Jin stood in Yuna's doorway, watching her sleep. She was sprawled across her toddler bed, one arm thrown over her head, breathing deep and steady. So small, so trusting. You're thinking about the letter. Jin turned. Minji stood beside him in the hallway, wearing one of his old t-shirts, hair pulled back. How do you know? Because I know you now. All of you. She slipped her hand into his. What did it say? That I'm a monster. That I haven't changed, just gotten more sophisticated at being terrible. That I'll poison Yuna the same way I poisoned everything else I touch. Minji was quiet for a moment. Do you believe that? I don't know. Jin's voice cracked slightly. Was I wrong? Should I have just killed her? Would that have been more merciful? You gave her justice, Minji said firmly. She murdered 3 people. She tried to murder me and our daughter. She deserved to face the consequences of what she'd done. That's not being a monster. That's being smart about protection. But I enjoyed it. Jin turned to look at his wife. I enjoyed watching her break. I enjoyed knowing I'd destroyed her so completely. What does that make me? Human, Minji said. Complicated. Still changing. She squeezed his hand. The old you wouldn't have questioned it. Wouldn't have felt guilt or doubt. You would have destroyed her, and moved on without a second thought. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The fact that you're standing here, worrying about whether you're still a monster, that's the difference. That's the proof that you have changed. Jin wanted to believe her, wanted to think that self-awareness and guilt were enough to make him different from who he'd been. But he also knew that the shadow had been very good at lying to himself. Teach our daughter to be like you, Jin said quietly. Not me. Promise me that. She'll be like both of us, Minji replied. That's how it works. She'll have your intelligence and strategic thinking. She'll have my compassion and empathy. She'll be her own person, neither of us, but parts of both. She pulled him closer. And we'll raise her together. We'll teach her right and wrong. We'll show her that people can change, that mistakes don't define you, that past darkness doesn't mean future darkness. Minji looked up at him. We'll be honest with her when the time comes. Age-appropriate honest. And we'll trust that we've raised her well enough that she'll understand. Jin looked back at Yuna, sleeping peacefully. She had no idea her father had once been called the Shadow. No idea he'd orchestrated psychological warfare. No idea what he was capable of when threatened. Maybe she never would. Or maybe, when she was old enough, he'd tell her everything. Let her judge for herself whether her father was a monster, or just a deeply flawed man trying to be better. I love you, Jin whispered. To Minji. To Yuna. To the life they'd built together. I know, Minji said. And that's enough. They stood there in the doorway, watching their daughter sleep. On the wall across from them hung a family photo from Yuna's first birthday. All 3 of them smiling, happy, looking like any normal family. You couldn't see the darkness in the photo. Couldn't see Jin's past or the violence he was capable of. Couldn't see the calculation behind his eyes, or the strategic mind that never stopped planning, protecting, preparing. You just saw a family, and maybe that was the truth. Maybe that's what he'd become. Or maybe Hana was right. Maybe monsters just learn to hide better. The past doesn't define you, Jin thought, watching his daughter's chest rise and fall. But it never truly leaves you either. The key is learning which parts to keep, and which to burn. I burned my violence, but I kept my mind. And maybe that's enough. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just more sophisticated at being terrible. Maybe I'm teaching Yuna to be like me without even realizing it. I guess she'll be the judge of that. Jin kissed Minji's forehead, took one last look at his sleeping daughter, and closed the door softly. Tomorrow, he'd wake up and be Kang Min-seo, devoted husband, loving father, legitimate businessman. He'd make breakfast, and change diapers, and go to client meetings. He'd be normal. Or at least, he'd play the role convincingly. And maybe after enough years of playing it, the role would become real. Or maybe it already was real, and he just couldn't see it yet. Only time would tell.